Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're putting on our hard hats and taking on the role of a digital city planner. Look, if you've been following enterprise architecture for any amount of time, you know that having a grand, sweeping vision is one thing, but actually figuring out where to lay the concrete, run the power lines, and build the physical infrastructure, well, that's a whole different challenge. And that's exactly what Phase D of the TOGAF architecture development method, the technology architecture phase, is all about. We're going to break down exactly how to take those high-level business goals and translate them into a robust, living, breathing technology foundation.
All right, let's take a quick look at our agenda. We've got 6 structured steps to get through today. Number 1, the technology architecture phase. 2, models and building blocks. 3, mapping the tech stack. 4, gaps, roadmaps, and innovations. 5, resolving wider landscape impacts. And finally, number 6, finalizing the architecture document. So let's just dive right in.
Step 1, the technology architecture phase, laying the foundation. Take a look at the highlighted yellow circle right here on the TOGAF ADM cycle. That's Phase D. This is the exact moment where your abstract business blueprint actually starts its transformation into a digital reality. I mean, we've already knocked out the vision, the business, and the information systems phases, right? So the core objective here is to develop a target architecture that actually delivers on that business vision using concrete technology components and services. Basically, we are defining the actual hardware, the software, and the networks that make the business tick.
Moving on to Section 2, models and building blocks, the Lego of our digital city. So before you pour any concrete, you've got to know what materials you're working with. And to gather our materials, we follow 3 initial steps. First, we literally open up the architecture repository and select our reference models. For a typical enterprise, this might mean pulling in generic models like the TOGAF Technical Reference Model, the TRM, just to give us a starting taxonomy. Second, we select viewpoints that directly address our stakeholders' specific concerns. Because let's be real, the chief financial officer and the lead developer, they need to see this architecture through very, very different lenses. And third, we identify the exact tools we're going to use to capture and model all of this info.
And that brings us to technology building blocks. Now, what are these? Think of them as reusable functional components that form your foundation. Honestly, for the non-technical stakeholders watching right now, just think of these as Lego pieces. At this stage of the game, we are not worrying about microscopic design details or, the specific brand of the plastic. We just need to know we have a standard 4x2 brick that we can snap together with other bricks to form non-conflicting service portfolios.
So the absolutely crucial point here is choosing the right size for those Lego pieces, which is what we call service granularity. Coarse-grained services are kind of like those giant Duplo blocks that contain a ton of functionality so you can build a structure incredibly fast. But the downside? They're harder to maintain, and if you need to tweak just one tiny part, you might have to rip out and replace the whole block. Fine-grained services, on the other hand, are like those tiny, highly specialized Lego pieces. They're super customizable, but because you have so many of them interacting over remote links, you really have to carefully manage network latency and performance to make sure they don't just bog the whole system down.
All right, Section 3, mapping the tech stack, structural beams of business apps.
This is where things get real. This is where we start translating those abstract blocks into actual concrete infrastructure. To pull this off, we need a physical inventory of the deployed tech. So we build technology catalogs, which is literally just a list of the products currently in use. We create matrices that map out the core relationships between all these different technologies. And then we start drawing. We produce logical diagrams of hardware and software and physical communications diagrams that map out the actual routers, the switches, the network links, and the firewalls that keep your data flowing securely. Now, for your major applications, we produce stack diagrams. And listen, if you are a non-technical leader, a stack diagram is going to be your absolute best friend. It visually maps exactly which structural beams, meaning the specific servers, operating systems like Linux or Windows, the software infrastructure, and the packaged apps are holding up your critical business operations. It strips away the jargon and shows you the physical reality supporting your business capabilities.
But hey, before we can build the future, we actually have to document the present. We define our baseline technology architecture. This is a grounded, realistic description of the existing environment, the current layout of our city, basically. And then we develop our target technology architecture. This is the visionary future metropolis that will ultimately support our overarching architecture vision.
Which brings us to Section 4, gaps, roadmaps, and innovations, bridging the divide.
So how do we actually get from the city we have today to the city we want tomorrow? Well, take a look at this table. This brilliantly illustrates the solution: gap analysis.
Notice how the baseline state, let's say you're running legacy on-premise servers, maps against a target state that requires an integrated cloud infrastructure. The gap we've identified here is modern cloud scaling. Boom! By identifying that missing capability, we instantly prioritize our candidate roadmap component. In this case, it becomes a cloud migration initiative. This right here is exactly how you logically justify and prioritize your technology investments for the upcoming phases.
Now, I really want to highlight this quote directly from the TOGAF standard because it kind of shifts our whole perspective. Technology isn't just a cost center that reacts to IT headaches anymore. With the rapid evolution of digital innovations, think AI, advanced telecommunications, edge computing, this phase allows you to leverage these new technologies to actually become the driving engine for enterprise transformation. We are literally incorporating innovation directly into the roadmap to create entirely new business capabilities. It's a real game changer.
Okay, Section 5, Resolving Wider Landscape Impacts, the Ripple Effect.
At this stage, we have to pause and ask a really critical question. How will this new technology architecture impact our pre-existing architectures? Think about our city planner again. If you decide to lay a massive new water main straight down Main Street, you have to make sure you aren't completely disrupting the existing neighborhoods or, cutting power lines or clashing with a subway expansion project that's already halfway done. We must systematically examine the entire architecture landscape to ensure our shiny new tech stack integrates smoothly with everything else the organization is currently doing.
And that leads us to our final section, number 6, finalizing the architecture document. Blueprints approved.
The planning is finally done. Now we got to make it official. After formal stakeholder reviews, we follow these 4 closing steps. We select the final standards for our building blocks. We fully document each block, and this is absolutely crucial. We document the rationale behind why we chose it. We run a final cross-check to guarantee that the technology architecture actively supports those original business goals we started with. And then, we map this new architecture back into the architecture repository so future projects can just reuse all of our hard work.
All of this incredible work gets formally published in the architecture definition document. Guys, this document is the ultimate blueprint. It details the fundamental functionality and security attributes, it lists out the dependent building blocks, it meticulously defines the interfaces, your APIs, data formats, network protocols, the whole shebang. And perhaps most importantly for business alignment, it provides a direct mapping to show exactly how these deeply technical elements execute your overarching business policies.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. If your enterprise really is a digital city, is your current technology architecture robust enough to support the massive business skyscrapers you plan to build tomorrow? Because what you design here in Phase D is quite literally the foundation of your company's future. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep building.